I went to my own funeral. Hello everyone, no, I did not die. The title of today's video is a metaphor, as you may have assumed. The subject we are going to discuss in the next few minutes, I'm sure will divide opinions. But I don't have any difficulties with that. I'm not here to be the pontiff of the truth, and I will really find it very interesting to read the comments, whether they converge with my ideas or refute my arguments, as long as they are intelligent and educated. Always, right? Including the meaning of the title of today's video, I went to my own funeral. It is the result of my disagreement when watching a talk by a person I really admire. This person said that we must kill bad feelings so that we can increase our level of consciousness and ultimately grow spiritually. So, here you can already notice that I live what I preach. I continue to admire and learn a lot of things from this human being of great wisdom, who I reserve the right not say his name or what nationality he or she is, but I can disagree with some aspects of his thinking without any problem. So feel free to comment whether you agree or disagree with me, but watch until the end to see the entire exposition. Agree?
Going to your own funeral means killing these supposed weaknesses, which, in a way, are part of our human nature. These impulses, according to Freud, would be our ID, the most primitive and instinctive part of the mind, present from birth, and which operates based on the pleasure principle, seeking immediate gratification of desires and needs. Sexuality is a good example. Therefore, the reasoning that is often used as a basis for this teaching is that, considering that God is holy, we must seek our perfectibility, our own holiness, so that we can get closer to the divine, and have communion with God. This is the first point that must be clear, so that we can continue our conversation. It would be necessary, then, for every human being to pay a funeral for our low vibration of feelings. The idea is to dig a deep hole and bury these emotions inside the grave. I'm going to guess, without fear of making a mistake, that 95% of people, if asked about the need to get rid of feelings of this nature, anger, greed, selfishness, etc., would answer in the affirmative. However, the answer is not that simple. Wait a little longer and listen to the entire line of reasoning to draw your conclusions, okay?
Beforehand, I anticipate that I will not defend the indefensible. I don't mean to say that a person should live based on selfishness and they give in to sadness and make it their flag. It's nothing like that. But I will demonstrate that the path to growth is not to kill these feelings, or even worse, as it is very difficult to eliminate these types of thoughts. Many people end up throwing these feelings into the basement of their soul, and this can even make things worse. Well, that was just a summary of what we're going to cover. Now the discussion is going to get fun.
This argument, that it is necessary to kill some parts of ourselves to grow, is seen in several schools of thought and different religions. An interesting analogy that said that we were like a tree, in this case a bonsai, and that in order to grow strong we needed to cut some corners. Christian doctrine, for example, is very emphatic in stating that we must kill our flesh. So, considering that our Western society was built on the pillars of Christian doctrine, it is necessary to understand well what Christianity teaches in relation to this subject, so we can uncover the roots of our thinking, and the origin of collectively accepted truths. Regarding the difficulty of living a righteous existence, doing what is right and subduing our animalistic desires, look at what the Apostle Paul says, in the book of Romans chapter 7, verses 15-18.
I don't understand my own way of acting, because what I want, I do not practice, however, what I hate, that I indulge in doing. I know that in my person, that is, in my flesh, there resides no good thing. because the desire for good is present in my heart, however, I cannot achieve it.
In the book of Galatians, chapter 5, verses 16 and 17, also written by the Apostle Paul, we find the following statement.
Therefore, I announce to you, live by the Spirit, and you will not satisfy the desires of the flesh. For the flesh strives against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. They oppose each other, so that you cannot do what you want.
This teaching, of not satisfying the desires of the flesh, if taken to the extreme, can be very dangerous, and we have already had several regrettable cases due to this type of ascetic philosophy. Some individuals, throughout history, have adopted extreme forms of asceticism, seeking to deny almost all bodily pleasures, in pursuit of greater holiness. A historical example is Saint Simeon Stylites, a Christian ascetic who lived on a column, pillar style, for 37 years, as an extreme form of self-mortification. In 2007, a 30-year-old Spanish man cut off his own penis and threw it down the toilet in his home in Salamanca, western Spain, because he no longer wanted to sin. This is not an isolated case, as we have news of countless cases of young people who mutilated themselves, cutting off the male sexual organ to avoid sin.
Well, we know that most Christians adopt a balanced interpretation of the scriptures, but we cannot lose the sight of the fact that the Bible is completely in favor of burying part of us that would lead us to sin. I use the word burial of part of us to maintain cohesion with the title of the video, but I could use any other synonym. If you are still not convinced by the previous biblical verses, pay attention to the next verse.
Matthew, chapter 5, verse 29. But I tell you, whoever looks at a woman with an impure mind has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and throw it away from you. For it is more profitable for you to lose one of your members than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it from you. For it is better for you that one of your members perish than that your whole body be cast into hell.
I believe that the relationship between these biblical verses and the title of the video is already clear to you at this point. But let's not debate it so much. Let's pretend that these extreme examples, such as case of mutilation of the flesh, don't even exist, and let's focus on the subjective issue, that is, on the elimination, or as I use in the title, on the burial of feelings and negative thought.
But how to know how to differentiate our being, our true self, from our thoughts and feelings? This is a point worthy of reflection. Could it be that, by killing these parts that are within us, even if they are, in theory, negative, wouldn't we be eliminating parts of our being? Regarding thoughts, Buddhism teaches us that we are not our thoughts. During the practice of meditation, it is possible to identify, even with some ease, the fluid nature of thoughts and that they often arise independently of our will. This way, our self would not be confused with our thoughts. Let us consider this Buddhist thesis satisfactory, and from now on we will assume it to be true. But nothing stops you from disagreeing and understanding that thoughts are part of our self. Even so, it will be possible to continue following the reasoning without any problems. We will only work on the feelings and desires that should be eliminated, buried. Remembering that we will not deal with thoughts, as they are volatile and are not part of our self. As we have already briefly discussed Christianity, we will present the second philosophical current that defends the ascetic stance of mortification of a weak feelings, Hermeticism. The Hermetic principle of polarity teaches that physical dualities, softness and hardness, solid and liquid, cold and hot, day and night, are all on the same level. They are extremes of the same layer, that is, they have a horizontality between them, thus, are at the same hierarchical level. Heat is not superior to hot, liquid is not superior to solid, light is not superior to darkness, they has its usefulness, its function, its beauty. Conversely, Hermetics believe that the polarities of the mental and emotional level have a hierarchy, they have verticality between them. In other words, love would be superior to hate, The feeling of happiness would be superior to solitude, solidarity would be superior to selfishness, joy would be superior to sadness, and the list goes on.
Just a parenthesis. I intend to make a video on this topic, lasting a maximum of 40 minutes. As you know, I always value practicality, and my commitment is to ensure that you have maximum information with maximum objectivity. I intended to talk about the principles present then and also criticize the aspects that, in my humble opinion, deserve criticism.
So, returning to the topic, considering that Hermeticism teaches us that the polarities of the mental, emotional, energetic level have a hierarchy, they have verticality between them, the evolution of man would move towards overcoming these feelings of low polarity, low vibration, greed, anger, selfishness, sadness, etc. Many other schools of thought follow a similar line of reasoning, such as Christianity, already mentioned above, which teaches the need to be born again to enter the kingdom of heaven. It is a figure of speech to say that we need to put to death the old man by killing our sins and rise again as a new man. Enough talking about Christianity, and let's make some brief considerations about Buddhism and other philosophical lines.
Buddhism emphasizes the importance of detachment as a way to eliminate selfishness and other negative feelings. According to Buddhism philosophy, detachment involves understanding that all things are impermanent and that suffering is linked to desire and attachment. In other words, as Buddhism preaches detachment, any type of materialist feelings must be eliminated. However, there are some teachers who teach exactly the opposite.
A contemporary philosopher who has gained much prominence, the South Korean Byung-Chul Han, defends that the idea according to which we should eliminate sadness and live in constant joy, the belief that we should be permanently happy, created a generation of depressed and exhausted people with burnout. Byung-Chul Han states that the palliative society is a society of positivity. In other words, we must avoid pain at all costs, not only physical pain, but especially emotional pain. You may have heard of the term toxic positivity. The windows presented on social media sell us the idea that, if you are sad, you are a failure. You need to get rid of these feelings at all costs and pursue your personal fulfillment, they say. This collective mentality, which idealizes the elimination of feelings such as sadness, is harshly criticized by the South Korean philosopher. According to him, it is important that there is space for criticism and negative reflections, as constant positivity creates a culture of superficiality. Now quoting another author, who is one of the most controversial figures of the last century and one of the greatest masters that India has ever produced, the Guru Osho, who passed away in 1994, taught that everyone needs to go through the stage of anger to become more loving, that we need to live in lust to become simple. Osho had a very interesting theory that said that, due to social prohibition, young people are not allowed to live their sexuality to the fullest during the right period, which is when their hormones are at their peak, between 15 and 16 years old, up to 25 years old. According to Osho, this young man would transfer this need for sexual experience into adulthood. Due to this unlived phase of life, this unlived desire, repressed and transferred to the future, would be the reason why there are so many people, aged 30, 40, and 50, even people who are over 60 years old, who behave like teenagers when it comes to sex. For Osho, these feelings and desires are part of human nature and should not be eliminated, but rather experienced in their entirety. According to Osho's thinking, over time, the man who meditates and seeks growth gains experience, and these feelings, such as anger, lose strength. From this perspective, we must be careful with this idea of getting rid of feeling A, B, or C. This imposition could generate internal pressure and hinder the true process of evolution. See that there is a relationship, albeit transversal, between Osho's idea and Byung-Chul Han's writings. The teachings converge regarding the need to experience pain to face and experience all aspects of life, even if they are painful, according to Han, or even if they are socially or morally questionable, according to Osho.
Before a hater comes and leaves a completely disconnected comment due to lack of interpretation capacity. When the texts talk about experiencing all aspects of life, even if they are painful, according to him, or even if they are socially or morally questionable, don't I am advocating crime, nor conduct that is harmful to third parties. I don't think I needed to waste time explaining this, right? Just an addendum. If you turn up your nose when I mention Osho, it is because you don't know his work. You probably form your opinion based on the Netflix documentary, which is totally partial and biased. I have a little authority to talk about Osho. Look, it's very difficult for me to say that I really know something, but I believe that someone who has read 11 books by an author can say that they know a little about his work, correct? Osho has become fashionable in the last decade, and most people know some of quotes they read on social media, but that's just a drop in the ocean. You've probably already seen some of his quotes on Instagram with a photo of a bearded Indian man. If you want me make a video about Osho, leave it here in the comments, okay? Let's move on.
Another thinker who taught about the need to experience each stage of life to evolve is the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. He created the theory of the cycle, camel, lion, and child, which is nothing more than a metaphor, to describe the individual's journey in search of freedom and authenticity. This theory is part of his work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, and represents an important aspect of his philosophy. For those who have never heard this theory, let's quickly explain it. The first stage of this cycle is represented by the camel. At this stage, the individual lives in accordance with the values and norms of society. The camel carries the weight of traditions, moral values, and social expectations, like a heavy load. He accepts these impositions as a burden and does not question them. The second stage of evolution is symbolized by the lion. Here, the individual begins to question the norms and values that have oppressed the camel, as well as questioning social conventions and established authorities. He seeks his own will and power, defying the restrictions imposed by society. The final stage is represented by this child. After the lion's rebellion, the individual passes into a state of creative innocence. The child is no longer tied to traditional norms or in conflict with them. Instead, embraces life creatively and freely, creating her own values and meanings. The child is able to live according to their own will to power, finding joy and authenticity in existence. Nietzsche suggests that, to achieve the state of the child, where the individual lives according to his or her own values, and creates meaning in his or her own life, a process of self-discovery and liberation from the oppressive influence of social conventions is necessary, seeking true individuality. To be clear, the camel is the person who doesn't question himself, who is part of the crowd. The lion says no to what is inauthentic and seeks his own truth. As a child, he is free from all social and cultural constraints. Lives in the present moment, is spontaneous, creative, and full of joy. The child represents spiritual fulfillment, where a person finds their true essence and lives in accordance with their authentic nature. You notice the similarity between the Christian concept and the Nietzschean concept of evolution, being a child. Although the word used is the same, and, to a certain extent, the semantic nature, that is, the meaning attributed to the word child, is similar, there is a fundamental difference between the Christian concept and the one developed by Nietzsche. Christianity preaches conversion, that is, a break with the practices and desires of the flesh, while the doctrine of Byung-Chul Han, Osho, and Nietzsche go in the opposite direction, defending the need to go through stages, experience in order to develop as beings humans. Finally, we will bring a third argument. Remember that so far we have talked about doctrines that preach the abandonment of these low vibrational feelings and desires, Buddhism, Christianity, Hermeticism, and later we presented authors who defend the opposite, Nietzsche, Byung-Chul Han, and Osho. Well, now we're going to present a third view so that we can conclude today's video. You must remember that the motivation for people to abandon certain feelings and attitudes would be the possibility of being closer to God. When we use the word God, we are referring to all categories of deities. Freud stated that the oceanic feeling, the one that would be achieved by people who reach enlightenment, nirvana, revelation, who manage to kill the pettiest feelings, and move towards unity with the eternal, this would all just be the expression of unlimited narcissism. Freud did not see anything transcendental and associated these mental states of unity with the eternal, a mere impression of external security, a feeling of integration and a sense of welcome, a search for reconnection with the primitive phase of the self. In other words, we seek to return to that phase, when we were babies, before the division between ourself and the outside world, in which we only knew unity. As always, Freud being brilliant and, at the same time, throwing a bucket of cold water on metaphysics. Guys, metaphysics is basically everything that cannot be investigated, or observed directly, in the concrete world, in the manifested world. Metaphysics is a discipline that seeks to explore the deepest and most abstract aspects of reality and existence. Interpreting this Freudian statement, Professor André Conti-Spomville demonstrates that Freud would be labeling mystical experiences as divine as pseudo-experiences, when in fact they would be a kind of mental projection of love for self, love for the mother, perhaps a kind of intrauterine regression, narcissistic projection, or, in Freud's own words, an obscure self-perception.
Guys, that's a lot of information. A class like this could easily be part of a paid course, and I am making all this knowledge available to you free of charge. So if you haven't left a like yet, don't forget to do so and subscribe to the channel. One thing I always say, and I've been saying this for many years, there are two things that when you share with someone, you multiply the amount. Do you know what these things are? Knowledge and love. When you share love with someone, and when you share knowledge, what was in your possession, what you were carrying has now been doubled. It remains with you, and it's also part of the other. This is magic. It is a gift. With the internet, we can do this for thousands of people. Long live the knowledge society. This work is still beginning, but I really believe in the quality of the material I deliver as I prepare each script with great care and based on a lot of research. If when you are watching this video, YouTube has already allowed you to leave a super like, I'll be very pleased to get a super like. I think this super like tool is fantastic and very democratic. Instead of me charging for access, I can let you watch all the content I will generate at your leisure, and whenever you think the video is relevant, you can give it a super like. Honestly, if one person sends me a super like, just one person, $1, I'll know that the content I made had a real impact. I know it's not even the value, but simply taking 2 minutes of your time to give me a super like, that for me will be very cool. I know that most people who are generating digital content have money as their ultimate goal. I don't judge. After all, we all need money. But I already have a profession that pays me satisfactorily. Here on YouTube, I have a very clear mission in my mind. Share knowledge. That's my mission. But guys, the video isn't over yet. After so much information, I think it is necessary to conclude so that we can consolidate all of this.
For most of our life, we have been guided by dominant currents of thought. Do this, John. Get rid of that, Sharon. This is a sin, Paul. We are taken away, like a leaf in the wind. The great turning point in our life must be the moment you decided to search for your essence, doing permanent work to deconstruct the truths acquired throughout life in order to find your own truth and, thus, be free. In other words, we don't toss away any part of ourselves because someone else told us to do, I don't do, or stop doing anything because they say it's right or wrong. This does not mean that we should disregard all traditions. It is not that. but we should always carry out a critical analysis of what is presented to us. Can you understand? Living according to your conscience doesn't mean that everything is wrong and we're going to invent 100% of own rules. That's not it. What we should do is sharpen our skepticism, even distrust. We tend to accept things without even bothering to think about them. Worse still, if we didn't want to think about it, it wouldn't be a problem. We would just have to research an author who has already written about the subject, but we don't even bother to do that. It is or isn't true. So just by being here until the end of this video, seeking knowledge, you are already outside the average curve of humanity. Some philosophers and even some gurus wondering too if this continuous search for evolution and growth wouldn't just be pure vanity, a way of wanting to appear superior to others. I do charity, I am holier, I am morally superior. Once again, we cannot generalize. We honestly believe that there are people who do charity from the heart, who seek holiness, and evolve as human beings out of a pure and true desire, but does vanity enter into this story? Professor André Comte-Sponville says,
The more I know myself, the less I can believe in our divine origin, and the more I get to know others, the less things get better.
To conclude the reasoning, look at this other sentence from Professor Sponville.
The fact that we are capable of love and courage, intelligence and compassion, natural selection may be enough to explain. These are selective advantages, which make the transmission of our genes more likely. But that we are capable of hatred, violence and pettiness, to such an extent, Darwinism explains without difficulty, seems to me to exceed the resources of any theology.
So, the final message is, don't demand yourself so much, have compassion for yourself, after all, you're just a human being. Those who tell you to be holy, that you should get rid of this and that, these people, feel the same things as you. Remember the text I mentioned from the Apostle Paul. So it is. Live your life with joy. The only moral compass you should follow is this: live your life to the full, always respecting others. Life is a game of balance. If you are sad, angry, jealous, notice these feelings. You don't need to want to get rid of them at all costs. Don't feed them, just watch, let them take their rightful place, and then, watch them go. Everything in life is impermanence. Even our idea of eternity is finite, it is limited by our mind. Impermanence is the only permanent thing in our lives. That's why we don't need to get rid of anything, that's bullshit. Over time, things take their place. Love yourself, have respect for yourself and others, this should be our compass.
I hope you liked the video. The links to the books I mentioned in the video, as well as other materials that I recommended as a complement of the studies, are all in the description. A big hug and see you at our next meeting here at the Knowledge Society.